Good evening and welcome to the Late Debate. Tonight we're talking transport in London, in particular Heathrow and the resulting by-election, which takes place just 5 weeks today. And later we'll be asking, do we need a minister for London? But first, what's been described as the biggest decision taken by Theresa May's government, the green light for Heathrow expansion.
Mr. Speaker, this is a momentous step for our country. I know that some members of this House have strong convictions on this issue.
The Transport Secretary didn't mince his words. After years of indecision, Heathrow finally got the green light for its third runway, and a new political storm erupted.
This is a government unafraid to take difficult decisions and get on with the job.
Within hours, Zac Goldsmith, a long-standing Heathrow opponent, resigned as the MP for Richmond Park in protest and announced plans to stand in the by-election as an independent.
It is a referendum on Heathrow in the sense that that's what's precipitated. We wouldn't have a by-election now if it wasn't for the fact that the government had taken the position it's taken. My party's changed its position on Heathrow. I promised years ago that if they did, I would trigger a by-election. That's why we have a by-election now.
Unfortunately for Mr Goldsmith, the Liberal Democrats have other ideas.
It's not up to any candidate to tell the people of Richmond Park what this election is about. It's up to the people of Richmond Park to decide. And given this is the constituency probably most hit and worst hit by the extreme version of Brexit that Theresa May has chosen to adopt, this is an opportunity for them to send a message to this government that could change this government's direction.
Just in case the Prime Minister hadn't got the message that some of her own MPs were very angry about Heathrow, she was confronted by one of Mr Goldsmith's allies in the Commons.
Can the Prime Minister explain how a third runway can be delivered and comply with pollution legal requirements? Does she agree environmentally Heathrow is not good enough and cannot possibly be both bigger and better?
The evidence shows that air quality standards can be met as required by all three of the schemes, including the North West runway at Heathrow.
Once the by-election has been decided, the battle to stop the third runway is likely to move to the courts. But before then, the battle's moving to this studio and my panel for the evening. For Labour, the Ealing Central and Acton MP, Rupa Huck. For the Conservatives, the Spelthorne MP, Kwasi Kwarteng. And for the Liberal Democrats, Baroness Susan Kramer, who used to be the Richmond Park MP. Welcome, all of you.
Hi.
Susan, do you really think you can win this? 23,000 plus majority you've got to overturn in Richmond Park.
Well, we're battling on two issues. Look, I've fought against third runway and expansion at Heathrow for over 20 years. And if you think we're going to let go now, you have it wrong, because it's a bad decision. Well, we can go through the reasons later, but it's a poor decision environmentally and economically. But of course, when you have a by-election, everybody has a chance to express their views. And I do think many local people have been tugging at my sleeve, saying they are furious about the decision to go particularly for a hard Brexit. Today UKIP endorsed Zac and decided not to run a candidate because he's their kind of man for hard Brexit. Now, local people have an opinion on that. There are also other local issues. We'll be fighting on the NHS and other issues.
Do you think Zac Goldsmith was selfish, arrogant, stupid, reckless to do this?
Well, Zac made a commitment. He's a personal friend of mine. I think he has good motives. I think I wouldn't impugn those motives. But I think what you have to consider is the fact that he made a statement publicly saying that if the government were to go ahead, the Conservative government were to go ahead with a third runway, he would then resign, and he's honoured that commitment, and I think we have to respect him for that.
But at the same time, he's put your government in a difficult position. You can't afford to lose any constituencies, and he might not win it. It's a gamble.
It is a gamble, and actually, frankly, he's standing as an independent, so technically the Conservative Party doesn't actually have a candidate in this fight.
Yeah, that really is rather peculiar.
Rupert, can I just ask you, does Labour have a candidate? Not yet.
Yes, no, we will have a candidate. We fight every seat. We're a national party. Of course we'll have a candidate.
You're not tempted to do what UKIP have done and step back and endorse?
We can't unilaterally decide that. It's for people to choose who they want. We're going to be on the ballot paper, definitely. I hope we can win it. You never know. Stranger things have happened. But on past precedent, it's not one of our strong areas.
As the MP for that part of Ealing, do you support Heathrow expansion?
personally, I'm going to be voting against this. I've always been against. I think it's a disastrous decision for Ealing. I mean, the new runway comes even more north than where it was. Even more of my constituents will be affected.
So, Kwasi, you're a lone voice here, somebody who
Yes.
actually supports expansion at Heathrow. Yet you live very close, or your constituents
Yes,
live
that's
very
right.
close to
I
the
live very
airport.
close. Well, I think the airport is a great boon for Spelthorne because of the economy, the jobs, the opportunities it creates, the links to other parts of the world.
What about the noise and
especially
pollution for other
post-Brexit.
Londoners?
I think we'll have a lot of mitigating effects. I think there'll be a lot of close scrutiny, a look at the environmental impact. But there's no doubt that we need aviation. We need to be able to be connected to other parts of the world, and the Heathrow third runway is the best way to deliver that.
Can I just say, Kwasi's only been an MP for a while. That's
6 years. I mean,
6 years. 6 years.
That's probably as long as
no,
you
but
were.
go back with our long history of Heathrow breaking every single promise that it ever makes to the community. Both that it would say this expansion will be the last, it never is, the next one appears, that they will achieve noise level reductions, which they don't, that there will be no pollution, which there isn't, which there will be no congestion with either traffic or there'll be public transport improvements, which there never are. So we have a long
Can you
history
rebut all
of
those
learning the
points?
hard
I mean,
way to mistrust
The thing
all
I
the
would say
promises.
is that until very recently, the Liberal Democrats didn't think we should build any runways anywhere. They live in a world where there's no economic growth, there's no economic expansion.
They were part of your government.
We will have.
And
Well, they
a very-
were, but
and a
they
very
were, and they opposed
successful
it.
part- and a
And they
very
opposed
successful
it.
part.
They opposed it.
But
I
mean,
completely.
expanding
I
and
was
building a
against them
British
then.
economy.
But
I'm
David
against them
Cameron
now.
said no ifs, no buts, no third runway at
Precisely.
Heathrow. He's completely left the crime scene.
But
since then.
let's. I mean, we talk about history. Let's look at the history. In 2003, that's a long time ago. That was before you were even an MP.
2003.
In 2003,
But I was certainly out there campaigning,
your
I
party,
can tell you.
your party had a white paper which recommended the third runway at Heathrow. 12
Yeah, but
years
in
after
May,
that,
our party had a
12
mayoral
years-
candidate who
12
won
years-
the biggest personal mandate
12
ever
years after
against
that, 12 years after that, we had a Howard Davis, an independent report, which came up with the same answer that the Labour government had done in 2003.
Rupert, can I ask you, what is your party's position on Heathrow? Because it's not really clear, is it?
We've actually got 4 tests
You've got
that are going to be
4
judged
positions.
over the next year. No. I mean, because we're not against expanding airport capacity,
So
but
where
we
would you
want to
expand it?
be...
But your leader and the Shadow Chancellor are opposed to Heathrow expansion.
I mean, and also our mayoral candidate, as I say, he got the biggest electoral mandate for
Okay,
any
let's widen this
person
debate.
ever.
We're all
So-
London MPs. We all have all London-based MPs. I'm just outside London. But let's ask people outside the M25 where they think expansion should be. The SNP want expansion at Heathrow.
But
The
they don't
Labour
live under the
MPs
flight path.
But
They're not affected
they're
by the
connected.
pollution.
But
They do not
None of
live-
them
not live with the
is near to
consequences.
we have
capital city,
to, but we
is
have
Heathrow.
to think nationally. I mean, yeah, okay, it's a London airport.
What about
but
your
it's also
Northern
the,
Powerhouse
it's
and all
also
these
the,
other
But all the
strategies for
Northern
the
Powerhouse people want
Midlands
Heathrow
NG?
expansion.
That's not
They
true.
want Heathrow expansion. The SNP want expansion. My colleagues in the Southwest want Heathrow expansion. In the Midlands, your Labour colleagues, they want expansion.
This time,
at Heathrow.
Susan, it's a done deal, isn't it? You can't stop Heathrow now.
We've been told that so often before. Look, I mean, part of it is, of course, I mean, already today we've got newspapers talking about, oh, actually the benefits have been dramatically overvalued. Hang on a sec, the costs are really high. Well, wait a minute, suddenly we're going to have an uphill sloping runway going over the M25 with pilots saying, I wouldn't fly that.
It is becoming slightly surreal, isn't it, when we're talking about turning the runway into a ski
Yes.
jump over the
It's
M25?
not surreal.
Which
I
will
don't
have
think.
to have a
I don't
tunnel
think. I
around
don't
it,
think there'll be
so
any
all the
ski
infrastructure
jumps or
as
anything
well.
like that.
I mean,
I think the fact is we've had this debate for a very long time. This government has had the courage to end the debate or end this part
might
of the
just be
debate.
the beginning. All the
end
court
this part
cases
of the
that are
debate.
gonna happen,
The
all
government has
the-
actually got a view which it hasn't had for 15 years.
think
Can you
it's just
imagine
the
that?
beginning.
What kind of country are we if we can't even decide where to build a runway?
Well, making
I mean,
a
that's
wrong
not right.
decision
That's
is
not
agree,
right.
never
they
good,
didn't
made
for so
slow
long.
or
They-
fast.
So where would you put it? You'd back Sadiq Khan and go to
I
Gatwick?
think Gatwick is
course.
echoingly empty by comparison. The amount of people that would be affected, it's 1 million people with Heathrow
What's wrong with
Airport.
Gatwick as far as
I
you're
think
concerned?
Gatwick is good. I'll let you into a secret. I think ultimately we'll probably have one at Gatwick and one at Heathrow. I've always said
That's the worst of all options as
it's
far
not
as
the worst of all.
environmentalists are concerned.
It's not- it's-
Davis said,
no, but we're not living in the
Gatwick
18th
is
century.
viable.
We're living in the 21st century. It's 2016. In 30, 40 years' time, there'll be tons more aviation. We can't just pretend that the world is just going backwards or staying still. There's economics, there's growth, there's business. We need to be connected to the world.
Do
we
any
need
of
to
you
build runways.
see any merit in the old Boris Island idea? One day in the future that there's going to have to be so many runways they can't all be so close to the capital.
Well, you're right in one sense, which is this is only one more step as far as Heathrow is concerned. I mean, the next terminal and the next runway follow almost immediately afterwards because that's the way they operate. But frankly, aviation is fundamentally changing. Aviation growth is from one place to a final destination, not going into a hub and spending 4 hours in a terminal before you get the flight to the place you want to go.
Right.
So places like Birmingham are absolutely critical. That's because that's where the demand is coming from. And it also begins to build the regeneration of the north, which we desperately need. So a completely different look. Our regional airports are where we need growth to get the greatest
Are we
benefit.
making this decision too hastily? Should we not wait for HS2
Hastily?
and see
We've
if
waited a long
debating this for
time, to be
20
honest.
years.
perhaps the
For
next
20
airport
years.
next runway could be in Birmingham?
So-
Well, it will be 38 minutes from London
We've debated
into the
this.
terminal.
I mean, as I said, the
think
government
that's-
white paper in
that's
2003
dithered
was
for
13
ages.
years ago. We've dithered, we've debated, we've been on programmes like this
£20 million.
for
The Davis
ages.
Commission costs £20
£20
million.
million.
I mean,
I'll
I
tell you
agree.
one thing again, Quatty. In the earlier reports, and even in this report, the damage of air pollution was never appreciated.
No, they did.
And people tended to laugh about air pollution. Now they realise the number of lives that are lost. And that has made a really dramatic change because people are seeing that a health impact is absolutely something that makes them say no. And this new airport, the plan that doesn't take any of that significantly into account and just has a wishy-washy
Can legal
to deal with it, but we
action
don't
I
know
think
how.
that Susan makes
Yes,
a good point
indeed.
about air pollution, but I think those concerns are being addressed.
Well,
And they
they've no
were
way to
addressed in
address them.
Davis. They were definitely addressed
But the
in
jobs
Davis.
as well
They're
that
not.
Heathrow promised, it just seems like they're figures plucked out of the air. It almost feels like that programme Mad Men, where they're selling the idea of smoking, and they
There
know
are going
it's
to be more
bad,
jobs.
and
I mean,
they're
there are
saying
going
it's
to.
good.
So what are you saying? There are going to be fewer
So
jobs
they're
if
kind
they
of-
expand the
No,
airport? I mean, what are you
they're
saying?
kind of figures that are. They
Well, yeah, I
seem
mean, they're
fantastical
rough
figures, all of
figures,
these
but
things.
they-
Well, I'd like
and
to
when
see
they
those in
say
our
these
regional
new planes,
centres, to
you'll
be
never
honest.
hear them.
Can I just ask one brief
promise
question
all
about
these goodies,
Susan, about the by-election? Your candidate, Susan Olney, hasn't actually yet been formally adopted. She has to go before what's called an internal star chamber on Friday. Should she be worried? Is there a chance a big beast might come along and challenge that Goldsmith?
Well, we are a party that observes our process. Sarah was our candidate for a general election. There is another step we put in to become a candidate that's for a by-election. I think she's fantastic. You will have seen her on the media. She's such a true local person. She's an accomplished professional. She's experienced the area because her family is so engaged and involved with it. And she's one of those new generation of Liberal Democrats who joined after the last election, angry that they themselves had sat on the sidelines in the past, and she's part of our future.
Because
and that, I think,
you
is
know
really crucial.
how effective Liberal Democrats
Yes.
can be in by-elections, particularly in Tory seats. You know they'll throw everything at this
That's
one.
right.
Zach Goldsmith doesn't have a party machine behind him. What are you all going to do? Are you going to stand there and watch, or are you going to go and campaign
No,
for him?
I think some of his friends, and on the Heathrow question, I have a totally different view, but I think he's an excellent member of Parliament, and I hope that he gets returned, and I hope he can defeat the Liberal Democrats. So I may well do my pennyworth and help to
Are you
be
allowed to
elected.
do that, mate?
I mean, he's an independent.
I think Prince
Yeah,
upon is
he's
being a
not
little
a
adjusted.
I think our view is that obviously government ministers won't be out there campaigning for him, but I think people on the backbench, ministerial aides, will be given some latitude.
and
This
Rupert,
makes it a completely pointless exercise then.
for Labour,
Yep.
is there an element of this being a grudge match, your chance to get revenge on Zach Goldsmith for the way you perceived his campaign in the mayoral election?
I mean, again, he used to have this reputation of being a nice, slightly vaguely green person, and the mayoral campaign he ran against Sadiq Khan was really shameful. I mean, he was saying Sadiq Khan was smearing him for being a millionaire, but he was trying to smear our candidate for being a terrorist. I mean, it was... So, I mean, I think, this whole thing is a completely pointless exercise. Someone's unilaterally decided for their own personal vanity reasons.
Can I briefly just
£250,000
move away from
public
Heathrow and the
purse.
by-election? The other big announcement that's come from the government on infrastructure is HS2. Chris Grayling confirmed that's going ahead. Are you all in support of it? I mean, it goes through your constituency.
It does. I mean, my problems with HS2 are that their sort of engagement with the public and their compensation measures are not good for a seat like us. I'm not against the idea.
Can you see better places to spend the money?
I mean, a lot of my constituents think it's turning into 100 million, whatever it is, billion. It's going up every day, white elephant. I mean, personally, I quite like the idea of it, but there should be Because all the compensation packages are for rural support
Susan,
schemes,
you
not
HS2
for
fan?
people.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was the HS2 minister for Birmingham going north, so I know the huge regeneration impact that comes to the north with that link that comes back to London through HS2. And frankly, I mean, we're out of capacity, and Londoners trying to go and do their business anywhere in the north. I mean, by 2026, we don't have HS2. We'll be strapping them to the roof of the trains. I mean, it really is serious.
Behind it?
I've always been broadly behind it, but I think Rupert makes a good point about the cost, because I was on the Transport Committee when it was first announced, and the costs have been creeping up. There's no question. I think we were talking initially about 30 billion. I think maybe now it's gone up to 50.
So unlike HS2, it looks like, listening to all three of you, that unlike Heathrow, HS2 is going to get a slightly easier ride through Parliament. For the moment, let's just park transport, because I want to move on and look at another early decision of the May government, bringing back the post of Minister for London, which was scrapped by her predecessor, David Cameron. The most powerful directly elected politician in the country is said to be the Mayor of London. But the capital also boasts another grand-sounding political title, the Minister for London. Almost 20 years ago, the job was held by Nick Rainsford, Labour MP for Greenwich and Woolwich. Now retired from Parliament, he wasn't impressed at David Cameron's decision in 2010 to scrap the post.
Frankly, I thought it was a rather facile and silly decision, because it ignored the fact of the need for someone in government to be a regular point of contact with the mayor on the huge range and number of issues where there was a mutual interest in ensuring well-coordinated government. That's what the role of the minister is, not to step on the toes of the mayor, but to ensure that government and London are working well together in everyone's best interests.
When Theresa May moved into Downing Street in the summer, she decided to reverse her predecessor's decision and appoint a new Minister for London. The election of Sadiq Khan in May means there's now a Labour mayor and a Tory government, and the minister's resurrection may be no coincidence.
We now have a period with a Conservative majority government and a Labour mayor. And for most of the time between 2000 and now, apart from a couple of years, there's been both at the same party at both national level and in City Hall. So it may be that Theresa May thinks she needs somebody to talk to the Mayor of London and vice versa.
There needs to be coordination between government and the mayor, but the minister has to be very mindful of the fact that the mayor has the democratic mandate in London, and the minister should respect that.
The first Minister for London was John Gummer in 1994. He's probably best known for trying to feed a beef burger to his daughter at the height of mad cow disease. The new Minister for London is Gavin Barwell, the MP for Croydon Central, who in a previous life was a special advisor to none other than John Gummer. Kwasi, why do you think Theresa May has brought back the Minister for London?
I think your programme explained very nicely why there was a need for it. I think it's important to have a point person, someone who is a connector, a go-between, if you like, between the government and the mayor's office.
Is it to keep tabs on Sadiq Khan?
No, I don't think you put a sinister sort of construction on this. I don't think it's about that. I think it's about communication, channels of conversation. I think Gavin Barwell is a very strong minister. He's a London MP himself, a marginal seat. He understands the range of needs in London. He's the housing minister as well, so it's not exclusively a London minister job, if you like. And I think he'll be effective in that role.
Susan, you'll have seen some pictures there that will remind you of your past, because for anyone who can't remember, you were, I think, the first Liberal Democrat candidate to be Mayor of London in 2000. So you were back in the beginning of the birth of the Greater London Authority. What do you reckon the value of having a minister is when we've got a directly elected mayor?
Well, I'm generally positive, but with caveats. I was on the Board of Transport for London, and I have to say there were times when Nick Rainsford was a real problem in terms of trying to deal with London issues. You remember the privatisation of the Tube, one of the most disastrous policies ever, and we could never get Nick to listen to us and to be our voice and Londoners' voice with the government. So it seems to me you know, London could certainly use a voice round the table, particularly when we've got issues like Brexit and a real threat to the financial services industry, especially, and jobs all across the City of London. But you need a lot of persuading me that the parties are going to work together in London's interests, and it's not the government attempting to shut down London using its voice to express the concerns of London.
Rupert, do you welcome the return of this minister, or do you worry that Sadiq may be finding himself with a barrier to
No,
where
I
he
think
wants
it's a
to go
good
to
idea
government?
to have someone in government as well as, and it should have been there all those missing years. I imagine it's because it's of a different party that the Conservatives want their man in London as well. But I mean, I found as an MP the kind of issues I want to raise for my constituents about things like the tube. I'm told, no, it's a devolved issue, it's a TfL thing. So to have a go-between person who can sort of represent at the cabinet table all those things, although is he cabinet level? Maybe
well, he's a minister.
Attends cabinet, does he?
Well, he's not actually in the cabinet, but you see, what you said is very right. As an MP, I mean, I'm not a London MP, I'm just outside London, but of course, a lot of the London issues affect my constituents. And as an MP, we can't actually ask the mayor any questions because he's not in the House of
Susan made a
Commons.
point about transport when Nick Rainsford was there and partial privatisation of the tube.
Yeah.
Are you somebody who enthusiastically supports Sadiq Khan's demands for more control of the railways in and around London? The ones that affect your
not the
constituents?
ones outside, because I see it as a power grab, really, in terms of South West Trains and some of the other networks. And I think that, you know, we should. It just complicates things. If you're going to have a situation where he's going to be in control of, you know, South West Trains and all the rest of it, that's a problem. And I just said a very important point is that I would like to question him. But I don't have that opportunity. I don't have the opportunity in the House of Commons to question Sadiq because he's not in the House of Commons.
Do you think that's a good idea, that the Mayor of London should be brought before a Commons Select Committee regularly?
He came to an APPG this week, actually.
Yeah, but it's
we are talking about devolution here. Look, I've long supported London that's basically driving the being the strategic authority, if you like, for many of the lines that commute into London. But it has to have a structure that lets you work with the other kinds of local communities. But it's a case of making sure that rather than somebody in the centre, in the Department for Transport, who has not really much sense of what's happening locally, is now removed from the picture, you've put it back in capable local control. And the truth is, only Transport for London has the capacity to manage something of that kind of size and complexity.
As a former Transport Minister, do you think the Mayor would do a better job running suburban railways than some of the
I've always
private
thought
companies?
that bringing it into the TfL family so that it's part of the coherent picture would make life better for, frankly, all travellers.
I think I don't agree with that because I want to have some sort of degree of accountability. As it is now, I cannot ask Sadiq Khan anything. He's sitting in the Mayor's office.
Bring them all into public ownership.
That is Labour's answer to everything,
absolutely.
On the railways
it's
at
a
the moment.
really popular policy, actually. It polls very well. It would
the
cost
numbers just don't
virtually
match
nothing.
Everything.
But
I think.
I mean, when we had that one franchise that was bringing all that money into the Exchequer, what was it called? Hang on, the
East Coast
Railway. Yes.
But I think your
good
broader
example.
point about the control, I think, is an important one, and I wouldn't want the Mayor to extend his powers.
Susan, Kwasi, Rupert, thank you very much indeed for talking to us. We're going to have to stop there because I'm afraid, once again, we've run out of time. So thank you to all my guests tonight. And I'll see you all next month when we're back with another edition of The Late Debate. Until then, thank you very much for watching and good night.